Once installed, the Excel monitoring configuration file can be found in the installation directory. By default, it's C program file 86 ACL PLC Excel PLC Excel com add-in files. The Excel monitoring configuration file is where the controllers or PLCs and their associated tags to monitor and log are configured. Once you open the PLC Excel monitoring configuration file, it can be seen that the configuration is spread over several worksheets. Controllers, this is where the PLCs or controllers are configured. Controller groups, each controller can have one or more organizational groups. The controller groups are configured in this worksheet. Group tags. Each group has a block of tags associated with it. These are the tags that will be monitored and or logged. A tag can be associated with one or more groups. Database. If login to a remote database is required, the connection string is configured in this worksheet. Bear in mind network failure here. Controller type. This worksheet is protected and should not be changed. It contains information on the supported PLCs and their supported data type. Okay, here we are in PLC Excel installation directory, and in the files folder we can locate the Excel monitoring configuration file. If we now double click on it, Excel will open. The only issue here is that Excel is in read only. When this happens, you need to close Excel and open the Excel monitoring config file in administrator mode. Okay, we now have the Excel monitoring configuration file open as administrator mode. What you get out of the box is our case study fully configured. We'll just go through the configurations worksheets briefly, but we will reconfigure this in this demo from scratch. So the controllers, in the controllers worksheet, you can see that we have our Siemens, our Logix, and our SLC controllers configured as per our case study. Controller groups. Again, once we have configured our controllers, we then configure the groups associated with each controller. then each group has got a number of tags. So we go to the group tags and we configure the tags and to their associated groups. Database. Database is we do not need remote login in this particular case. So we do have a connection string, but the remote login enable is disabled. So we are going to be logging to a local database. Controller type. Now, this is the protected worksheet, and it'll give you a list of the supported controllers and their associated supported data types. So when you configure your controllers, this is the list that you select from. PLC Excel is capable of handling one or more PLCs of different types. The supported types are detailed in the controller type worksheet. So in here, we're going to clear the out of the box content, and we can start over to demo how the data is entered to configure controllers. As you can see, we ended up with some blank rows here. This is an Excel table. To clear the blank rows, you press this minus button, and all we are left with is just one row. Because it's an Excel table, you cannot delete all the rows. There has to be a minimum of one. So the IP address is something we enter. This is our Siemens PLC IP address. So the controller type is an S7 1500. And as you can see, the controller type is a drop-down, which makes it easy to know which controllers are supported by PLC Excel. The rack is 0, the slot is 1, the port is 102. Now this is normally fixed by Siemens and should not need to be changed. The timeout, which is the connection timeout, 3000 in milliseconds, so that is actually 3 seconds connection timeout. To add more records to the table, we need to expand it by pressing this plus button. 1, 2, 3, and you can see it's doubling the size of the table for every press. So rather than you seeing me type the other two controllers, we'll try and copy and paste them from what we had before. Again, as you can see, these are our three controllers. The Logix controller means control Logix, compact Logix, soft Logix, and the SLC is mainly the SLC 505. And as we are left with some blank rows, we can trim them using this minus button. And now our controllers have been configured. Okay, now that we have configured our controllers, we move on to controller groups to configure our groups. So again, we will clear the existing content. We trim our table as before. The controller IP is a drop-down which gives us all the already pre-configured controllers. We have configured the Siemens, a Logix, and an SLC. And here they are, the three of them. So we select the Siemens. The group is something that we actually type in S7 mixing. So now we have configured S7 mixing group to be associated with the Siemens PLC. Do we want to enable this group? Yes. What that actually means, each group has got a number of tags associated with it. If the group is disabled, then the tags will not be monitored and will not be logged. So you can pre-configure and decide what you want to show on Excel afterwards. Scan time, 200. This is in milliseconds, and this is basically the scan time of PLC Excel for monitoring the PLC tags in the PLC. Login frequency. Now, if you decide to log the tags associated with this group, it will do it according to this login frequency. Let's say 1 second. What that actually then means, it means that group S7 mixing is associated with the Siemens PLC. It is enabled, so its tags will be shown on Excel. A scan time, which is the PLC Excel scan time. And the login frequency is obviously how often do we log the data associated with a group. We now need to expand. And rather than see me type, we will try and copy and paste what we had before. So let's look at this for a minute. So you can see the 155 IP address, which is a Siemens, has got two groups, S7 mixing and S7 continuous. And again, the control logics, which is 18, has got two groups. And the SLC also has two groups. They all have the same scan time. They all have the same login frequency. And now our groups have been configured. Okay, now that we have configured our controller groups, it's time to move on to group tags to configure the tags for each group. Again, we are going to clear the existing data, clear content, trim our table, and on the top left hand side of the Excel table we have selected controller group. This is a drop down and it shows us all the groups that we have already pre-configured in the controller groups worksheet. Let's select the first one. You can see that the S7 mixing group is shown alongside with its PLC, its associated PLC. The rest of the columns, friendly name, description, PLC address, PLC data type, units, are tags data. Friendly name is usually a symbol associated with a tag and is optional. Description, however, is a must, as PLC Excel displays it to indicate the function of the tag. In this case, this is flour weight, and the data block address is db2.1036. It is worth making a note that PLC Excel supports the data block PLC addressing. It does not support the symbol PLC addressing. And the data type of the flour weight is real. Units is optional. Rather than type in all the other tags, let's just expand our table and see. And here we are. We have got our data. We trim our table and let's just have a look. You can see the S7 mixing group has got 6 tags. The S7 continuous group has got only 1 tag. Also note the control logics PLC addressing, recipe.flour weight, recipe.sugar weight, which is a typical way of addressing tags in control logics. And for the SLC we have F8, F81 and 710, again is a typical way of addressing tags in the SLC 505. Configuration is almost complete. If we require remote data logging, we move on to database. And in here we specify the connection string of the remote database, and the remote login enabled should be set to true if we want to log to a remote database. If it is set to false, PLC Excel will just ignore the remote connection string and will log data into the locally installed database. And that's it. Our configuration is now complete. But just to summarize, we have configured our controllers, then our controller groups, then our group tags, and our database. And do remember, if you need any details about the supported controllers and their supported data type, just go and inspect the controller type worksheet.